Hey everyone, I'm just going to give everyone a couple seconds here to log in. We've got a great full webinar today of folks, so we'll just give everyone a chance to get in and then we'll start. Alrighty, well, thank you everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from today. I'm glad you're here in our NYOUG viscosity webinar. We're super excited to host again Michael Ferrante from Oracle. I'm so sorry I missed an an email window somewhere if you hear that background noise, but thanks for joining us. It is a live webinar, so feel free to submit questions in the Q&A field and Michael will get to you as he can, whether that's during the webinar or following, but go ahead and get those questions in as you think of them. Today's webinar is presented and co-hosted by Viscosity and the New York Oracle User Group. Hopefully you've been a regular to our co-hosted webinars for the last 3 years. We're still super excited to be partnering together and bringing you awesome speakers like Michael today. So I missed you guys last time we had Michael speaking, but my name is Monica and I'm the marketing director here at Viscosity. We are a full Oracle Stack consulting firm if you've never heard of us before, but I will tell you a little bit about us after Coleman tells us about NYOUG. Coleman?
Thank you, Monica, for the kind introduction. So next slide, please. So we've been formed, and meaning the New York Oracle Users Group has been formed in 1984 for the exchange of ideas, assistance, and support among users of Oracle software products. Next slide, please. You can reach us on Twitter, which is now X. We'll have to fix that slide. Of course, our website, nyoug.org, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we're always looking for webinars. You have an abstract, an idea. We'll help you work through it so you can present it as a presenter for one of these upcoming webinars. And again, one more time, thank you, Michael Ferrante. Thank you, Viscosity, for this webinar today and the ongoing series of webinars from Viscosity.
Thank you, Coleman. Sorry for my little screen mishaps here. Trying to mute my emails. All right, so I'll try to make this quick. But again, my name is Monica with Viscosity North America, where our mission is to enable business transformation at a time when companies must change to survive. On this slide here, you'll see we're built on 3 pillars: data, apps, and cloud. And across the bottom, you can see a couple items that we offer across all 3 pillars. But if anything here speaks to you and any pain points you're experiencing, any help you need assistance with, please let me know. You'll get an email from both Coleman and myself following up today's webinar, and you're welcome to respond to either of us with any questions. All right, on this slide, I'm just highlighting some of my coworkers and colleagues who are recognized by Oracle Corporation in the Oracle ACE program. These guys, they're constantly writing, speaking, presenting. They're out there in the Oracle community regularly. If you don't own any books from them or if you've never seen them speak in session, I highly recommend seeking them out or any other Oracle ACEs. It is a worldwide program, so if you're not in the US, there are tons others. I would just Google Oracle ACE and go look at the pages, and you can actually find consultants that are also ACEs near you. Okay, on here, I've got a couple items to highlight, but I always just try to take the time to focus on Oracle License Management. Since a lot of my team came from Oracle, this is a portion of our business that I find we help our clients the most because it can be confusing, and we do work directly with Oracle to make sure you're just paying for exactly what you need, and then we follow up and make sure that you are executing and using your investments to the most that you can. So always remember there's lots of help with Oracle partners. like viscosity and Oracle license management is a big one. So I always recommend it. We're doing it all the time, so it's a lot easier to navigate and less headache for you and your organization. And then on this page, I've just got some of our books we highlight. We do have over 25 books between our consultants here at Viscosity. Our newest ones are Oracle Database Performance Tuning, Upgrading Oracle Databases, and Oracle on Docker. We just gave away a ton of free books at the show floor at Oracle Cloud World, and we'll be giving away a lot of other free books at some of our upcoming workshops. All right, and then finally, before we get started, orapub.com is where Viscosity houses all of our recorded webinars, slide decks, whether they're webinars like this today or other webinars we host on our own or in-person events. We throw everything we possibly can here so you can access it after the fact. We also have live training through Orapub, and you can check that out. There are paid tiered memberships that get a little more, but the free membership gives you a lot of free training material as well. So if you're not at Orapub yet, go check it out, sign up for a free membership, and you'll find a ton of slide decks, little quizzes, and webinars to rewatch. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Coleman to introduce today's speaker. Again, if you joined us late, it is a live webinar. Please take advantage of this hour of time you have with our presenter today, and do that by using the Q&A field so you can ask him questions along the way. All right, Coleman, all yours.
Thank you, Monica. Michael Ferrante is a senior principal product manager on Oracle's application development tools team, working primarily with Oracle Forms. Joining Oracle in 1999, Michael has spent over 2 decades in various roles associated with Oracle Forms and related Fusion Middleware technologies. From support engineer to global technical lead to product manager and numerous roles in between, Michael's remained closely connected to Oracle's middleware products, but none closer than Oracle Forms. Working side by side with Oracle's customers and Oracle's development and many Oracle support teams, Michael helps to bring the latest innovations to further versions of Oracle Forms and other application development technologies. One more time, thank you, Michael, for presenting today, and thank you, Monica, for our relationship with Viscosity.
Awesome. Thank you, Coleman. I'm going to extend what you just said, and I'm going to thank you and Monica both for inviting me. This is my second with New York, OUG, and Viscosity, and again, I appreciate the invitation. This is a great opportunity for us to get some information out to the product users and keep everybody well informed. So thank you again for the invitation. I greatly appreciate it. For those of you who do not know me, hello, how are you? I am, as mentioned, a senior product manager at Oracle and application development tools. It's been well over 20 years now. I could see just by looking at the participants list that we have people literally from around the world, and I greatly appreciate that. I know for many of you it's getting a little late in the day, so again, thank you for sticking around a little later in the day to hear me go through some of this stuff. As mentioned, if you have questions, certainly share them, and I'll try to pick them up along the way, and if not, at the end, and still if not, we will try to get to them after the session. However, the one thing I will say is try not to get ahead of me. Just bear with me. We probably will answer a lot of your questions, so there's no reason to get ahead of me and ask me things like, for example, when is Forms 14 going to come out? Obviously, we're gonna talk about all that, so we'll get there in just a second, so bear with me. With that, let's share my screen and see if we could get this ball rolling. All right. So because we are going to talk about things that don't exist yet, I am required to share this legal statement with you. If you would please just take a moment to skim through it and understand that what we are delivering here is just informational content. Nothing here is a commitment to deliver, although there is a possibility that some or all of what we discuss here could potentially be delivered. But what exactly will happen, we won't know until the day we actually deliver it. All right. So I'm going to very quickly go through some stuff in the interest of time. For those of you that know me, I will always run long. If you give me 5 minutes, I'll take 10. If you give me an hour, I'll take 2. So I'm going to try to move along quickly, and hopefully at the end we will have time for a little bit of back and forth discussion. But we're going to look real quick at how Oracle Forms got from the beginning to now and where we're potentially going. We'll take a look at that so-called next in the evolution, or 14 and beyond. I'm going to share some information on what you're going to need to know as you prepare to get involved with version 14. Take a look at the rest of the year's event schedule for myself, and then again, we'll talk about questions and answers as we have them or have time for them. For those of you that are familiar with forms, which I guess all of you are, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here, you all probably have seen some variation of timelines like this, or version lines, I should call it. So Oracle Forms started long ago, back in the 70s, probably the exact release date is still debatable, but roughly around the 1980 timeframe. Oracle Forms made it to the streets. It wasn't called Oracle Forms back then, but at the end of the day, it still was what we see today as Forms, just in a little bit of a different look and feel perspective. There's been a lot of variations along the way. We always refer to Forms as the evolving technology because, unlike others who come and go, we've managed to stick around and stay relevant in the technology space for whatever the current time requires, at least as best we can. The important part for today is going to be that bottom line where we went web only. So starting in version 9.902 in particular, we've transitioned away from all of that client server and character mode model and went to a 3-tier architecture, which I believe turned out to be a pretty successful transition. It's definitely helpful for administrators, preventing administrators from having to touch users' machines, at least not as much as they used to. Now everything is centralized on an application server, thereby making life a little bit easier. But the point here is that we definitely have evolved over the past 30 or 40 years, I think pretty successfully, and hopefully everyone understands that as well. So in the beginning, we had something that looked a lot like this, maybe not exactly like this, but something like that. And then eventually we went into client server, and then eventually we went ugly 3-tier, and then eventually we went to something like this, which from a color scheme point of view resembles something along the lines of what our e-business suite applications look like. Granted, this is not an enterprise class application, it's just an example. The Forms 12 family, which we're going to jump all the way forward because that's what's relevant, came with about 6 iterations or dot releases. Historically, those dot releases were patches only. However, in the case of version 12, we managed to sneak in some new features along the way. And as you could see, there was a cadence of about an annual release from the time that we released in 2015. We did release a new version just a few months ago. That version was a bit unplanned, but nonetheless, we did release it, and it now lives in the family with everybody else, version 12. So I'm kind of happy to see that. I think it was a step that needed to happen. So 12.2.1.19 is the current version. The expectation is that all of our customers expecting to get any kind of error correction support will be on this version within approximately a year. So approximately September 2024, error correction support for 12.2.1.4 and older versions will no longer be available. Of course, you're always going to be entitled to contact Oracle support, and they'll help you the best they can, get you pointed into the right direction to find documentation you need or obtain patches that pre-exist. But what we will not be able to do is provide you with new patches after September of 2024 for versions 12.2.1.4 and older. 12.2.1.19 will have Premier support, including error correction support, at least until December 2026. That date could change based on the status of the next release. And extended support will take you into December 2027, which is quite a long ways out. Okay. So if you haven't figured it out yet, each release of Forms is kind of yours. A lot of what we've done in these versions is the result of feedback that we've obtained from our customers. Some of it is the side effect of industry demand. You know, the whole 3-tier architecture thing was kind of, that's the direction the industry was going. So we looked into that. for those of you that know me, I do try to leverage a little bit of social media. I leverage Twitter and LinkedIn quite a lot. I attend conferences as much as I can. That too also turns out to be a great place for all of you to provide feedback that I usually take back on return from the trip. But honestly, I say usually because I usually send that information back to my developers immediately after speaking with you. So whether I'm in a different state in the United States doing a conference or in Europe somewhere doing a conference, usually immediately upon you sharing that information with me, suggestions or whatever it may be, I usually share that back with our development team so that they could start pondering the idea, and that way when I get back into my home office, we could discuss it in more detail. So lots of creativity from all of you, and we greatly appreciate that. Without your help, believe it or not, we would not be where we are. So it's definitely a mutual effort, I'll say, as we go forward. This slide I know many of you have seen before, but I like to show it because it does highlight some of the visual or user interface changes that we've made along the way in version 12. Some of them not such a big deal, but some of them definitely add some possibilities for those older looking applications. In version 12, we did spend some time focusing a little bit on user interface, but not quite as much as we plan on doing for the next release. But in many cases, that's our biggest area of focus because you have spoken. We get a lot of feedback from our customers asking for ways in which the user interface could be improved. So we're trying to do our best to offer that improvement as we go along. And in 12, like I said, we try to do that as best we can within the amount of time that we had. Okay. So where do we go from here? You've heard me talk about the next release for a long, long time. It has been delayed and actually brought earlier and later several times for a variety of reasons. I won't go into the details here as to why, but nonetheless, it has. And it's looking like we're getting pretty close to the finish line. So I'm kind of excited to start sharing some of the information about what's going on with it. Like I said, and when we get to the end, I'm going to share some insight on what you'll need to know as we get even closer. So the plan at the moment is the next major release in the middleware family will be versioned 14.1.2. something, probably 0. It will include forms and reports if the plan goes well. And its planned availability across the entire stack is sometime in calendar year 2024. We do not have an exact date right now, but the plan will be to release sometime in 2024. I can't necessarily speak for all the middleware components, but the plan at the moment is we're going to try our best to deliver all at or about the same time. So just to cite an example, forms, reports, Oracle HTTP server, WebLogic server, identity management, and all those pieces that you historically have heard about in the middleware space. Again, we'll try to get those all out roughly at the same time if everything goes well. Okay. For forms, some of the key improvements, as I mentioned, we're going to look at the user interface again. We did it in 12, but not nearly as much as we're going to do in the next release. We are going to make some design time tooling changes, nothing drastic, everything relatively minor. This has kind of been a trend now since version 12. We're trying to not reinvent the wheel for the design time tooling, but we are going to make some improvements where necessary. There are going to be some performance improvements. We actually did some in version 12. Now, the odd thing about performance improvements is they're kind of transparent to you as you consume the product, unless you actually start doing testing on it. And what was interesting was in version 12, we actually made some substantial improvements in the area of performance. And in 2015, when we released, which I think it was around the August timeframe, that September, I was at Oracle Open World in California, and immediately upon the doors opening and customers being allowed in, I had people standing around me in just amazement at how much better the performance was of 12 compared to the earlier versions. So that was a really good indicator that we were on the right track. So I was really happy about that. For this next release, I'm hoping we experience the same thing. And it's probable that we will, because I think the performance improvements we're going to see this go around are going to far exceed what we saw before. Let's keep going here. There's going to be some security improvements. This is all stuff we normally do, but there's going to be some things that are targeted as we go into this release. Domain configuration options or install options. And data handling and integration changes. Again, this is in the context of forms, and I want to kind of explain each of these as we go. Okay. Let's start with the last first. So again, I've mentioned this for a long time now. It was several years ago that I had one of our customers literally invite me to their site in Europe. And I sat down with them and they discussed their desire to have support for getting data through REST. And for a bunch of technical reasons, we were not really able to deliver as soon as I would have liked to have, but it looks like we're going to finally make good on that request. So being able to access data through REST, I think, is going to be a pretty significant change for us, because historically forms was tightly tied to the Oracle database. This change potentially puts you in a position where you can use one or the other or both. So if you don't want to use an Oracle database, you might choose not to. In this initial rollout, the plan is that it won't be quite as easy. You're going to have to code a lot of stuff on your own, but at least it'll be in PL SQL as opposed to writing external Java or anything like that. We're going to try to automate some of that coding for you, but as a general statement, there will be some manual coding needed. And then as we iterate through the versions, hopefully we'll get to improve that. For those of you that don't know it, there's a feature or functionality in the database already called continuous query notification, or CQN. We're going to actually integrate or embed that in forms so that your forms applications can easily take advantage of that functionality. At a high level, what that feature is going to allow you to do is allow you to, as a developer, notify your users of situations where the data that they're currently looking at may have become stale or changed by some other user over the course of time since they've made their last query. That could be pretty helpful. Imagine a case where your application is looking at the inventory in a warehouse and they're trying to set up an order for another customer. It sure would be nice to know if the inventory level went to 0 while you're on the phone with one of your own customers who's wanting to order one of those items. This functionality will allow you to do that. So that you could be warned immediately, hey, there's no more, the pencils in the inventory anymore. It went to 0, so don't try to order any. We're going to try to introduce data sorting, and when I say try to introduce, what I mean is rather than you having to go back to the database and re-query with an order by clause, we're going to actually do the sorting on the middle tier. And because we're able to do that in the middle tier, and against the data that we already have, we could do it incredibly faster. And when I say incredibly faster, I mean incredibly faster. Rather than going back to the database and waiting on that exchange and all the data to be returned, we're going to take the data we have and do a quick sort in our own system and send that back to the user tier. So far, the testing that we've done on the prototype of this functionality has been phenomenal. Where it could potentially take several seconds or longer to return a query from the database, we're able to resort the data in a matter of a second or so, just depending on how much data you have. So it's pretty impressive that at the click of a button, we could just snap through thousands, tens of thousands of records, hundreds of thousands of records in just a matter of a second or so. So that should be pretty cool. Okay. Standalone launcher has become kind of a de facto standard for running applications. You still have the option of web start to use also. Some customers are still using embedded applet, which I don't recommend, but some still have decided to use that. At any rate, we are planning on continuing to make improvements to the standalone launcher beyond what we've already done. In 12.2.1.19, we introduced this automatic SSL certificate importing built-in functionality. We're looking at extending that a little bit further as we go into 14. Request from a couple people that are actually on this call is auto update. The way it works now is if you update, if you apply a patch, for example, to the server, Many of the patches that we apply also include what I call the client-side content. That forces you to have to update the standalone launcher on the user machine as well. Well, that could be pretty problematic if you've got 10,000 users out there. How are they all going to get the update without them manually going and getting it? This is going to solve that problem. It will work very much like an update functionality in your browser. It's going to say there's an update. Do you want to get it? And it's going to download it. And then it's going to update your launcher and then restart whatever application you were trying to start in the first place and seamlessly continue on. So this should be a pretty cool update for the standalone launcher. Some other changes are going to include extending on functionality we already had. So in Fusion Middleware Control, there's already an option to expose an advanced editor. However, right now in the version 12 family, it's kind of limited as to what you can edit in those screens. Right now, I think it's mostly the HTML template files and the WebUtil config file. In the next release, the plan is we're going to include just about all of the more commonly edited or editable files so that you'll have this full screen editor where you could change multiple sections of it all at once, right? It's just a plain text editor. So if you wanted to copy the entire contents of a file in your file system into here, you could do that as opposed to one line item at a time. So that's pretty powerful. On the right-hand side, you'll see a change to the resource or remote access descriptor editing screen. We had a lot of customers ask for functionality where they could bulk upload a bunch of those resources all at once. So we came up with this concept where you could include as many entries as you want, and all at once have them plugged in. So that should be a pretty good improvement as well. We are looking at some updates to install and configuration. My transition didn't work real well there, but the very first one on the top left represents what you see today. It's a full installation with a full domain. It's typically going to be used by enterprise environments of larger scale and or those who require a single sign-on. It does, like I said, include the full runtime functionality as well as all the design time tooling. It does include, we're talking about including the FADS server, but not the FADS UI, for those of you that use Forms Application Deployment Services. Otherwise, the rest of it is optionally installed. That install type does require a repository database. Of the new options, right below that, you'll see the full installation option with a lightweight domain. That will be ideal for smaller or medium environments, specifically those that don't require functionality like single sign-on or that added security that the full installation offers because of OPSS, Oracle Platform Security Services. That won't exist in this lighter weight model. In this lighter weight model, it will not require a database for the repository, so that kind of helps out quite a bit. And as you can see there on the bottom, it will have some runtime limitations. Like I said, single sign-on support is one of them that it will not have. Okay. On the development side of the world, which is the right side, we're potentially going to offer a lighter weight installation, which is kind of akin to what we used to do in the past, where we would deploy the Forms servlet into the admin server and not have a Forms managed server at all. The side effect of that is you only have one server to start and stop. There is no managed server, as I mentioned. In this lighter weight configuration, there again is no repository database, and because of that, there is no single sign-on support, as well as some other functionality as well. You could potentially use that for production, although we're not going to recommend it. And in fact, we are likely, if we do deploy this, we likely will document it as a development only configuration. And then the last one on the bottom right is the one you see today, which is the form builder standalone, which is just the design time tools with no runtime at all. So this is a pretty big stretch beyond what we had before. Hopefully one of those will meet your needs. And I think I have an oops in my slides. I think we have a duplicate here. And for anybody that's wondering, at the moment, Oracle reports, although it will be included, we currently do not anticipate them picking up any of these new configuration types, although they might. As of this moment, it looks like they may not. Okay. For cloud, we're looking at Oracle Linux 8. The high probability we will support Linux 8. Linux 9 is still being reviewed, although there's a pretty good possibility we're going to support it as well. I'm talking about at release time. We are looking at doing Microsoft Windows. We might possibly do that for 12.2.1.19, still on the fence with that one, but for 12.2 for 14, there's a little bit more of a probability we'll do it there. We're going to improve the provisioning tools. We're going to break away from that shell-like provisioning. For anyone that's done our provisioning before in cloud, it's a little awkward working out of the SSH shell, copying and pasting information and that kind of stuff. We're going to work on providing a little bit more of a UI behavior rather than a shell. For IDCS, or Identity Cloud Service, we're potentially going to add an auto configuration utility so that you don't have to go through the hoop jumping in order to wire IDCS to your forms environment. For anyone that was on our last call, I maybe mentioned it and no one caught the subtle passing by of it, but IDCS can be used right now with 12.2.1.19, although we have not officially stated that or provided documentation for it. The code changes required to function with IDCS and forms are already in place for 12.2.1.19. The documentation is still forthcoming. Once we get it out there, we'll make an official statement. So here's the fun stuff that I know a lot of you are waiting for, the UI. I probably could spend the next 2 hours covering all the UI improvements that we're planning. So I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly, but not too quickly, hopefully. But let's just say we have made extensive changes to what you could do with the user interface and the widgets on the forms that you create. As you can see here, edit items, talking about text fields, display items, list items, radio buttons, push buttons, alerts, windows, canvases, graphics rendering, font support, dynamic record creation. The last time I was live at a conference, I was in Germany at the German user group, and the very last thing that was said to me before I left and returned home was, can't you come up with a way that we could have records added or removed to the application dynamically? And at the time, I stood on stage and I said, nope, it's not feasible. And by the time I got home, I had a moment and came up with a possible way of doing it. And when I went to my development team, they said, you know what, we probably can do that. And it looks like we are potentially going to deliver on that. So I'm really excited about that. And also record tiling. Now on the right-hand side are just some screenshots of some prototype pictures that we've come up with along the way from actual applications that we're experimenting with. So these aren't just drawings, these are real. And you could see the significant differences here versus what you might potentially have today. Right from the show password button in that first text field to the different characters, the circular characters instead of the asterisks, the stars for concealed data, the use of fonts that exist on the user's machine instead of the Java virtual fonts, which typically are kind of boring. Multi-line text editors with character counters. We've actually now recently, since I made this slide, we actually added that functionality to single line text fields as well. So that counter could potentially be used on either of the two types of text fields. We've added a new widget called Spinbox, although that's going to fall into the category of a list item, as is Slider, the little slider down there in the middle where you could slide the little arrow left and right. You could use that to change values, or you could disable it and use it as a display item to display a particular level or value to a user based on a sliding scale. Down directly below that, you could see the progress bar shown in this case as a progress bar with a percent, but you could also show a number in there instead of a percent. The other subtle little thing that you see in there are those buttons that have an icon and a label. Previously, you were not able to do that. On the right-hand side, again, similar, you could see the buttons and the labels together in different locations on the buttons. But one thing that you probably should note is that the button in the middle has kind of a square representation to it, or kind of rectangular. And the ones on the left and rightmost side have curved corners. There's also another option that I don't show here where both sides are curved. So we're going to expose that as well. The two different kinds of switches for Boolean objects, or check boxes and radio buttons, will now be exposable as switches instead of a checkbox or a radio button. And then at the very bottom, you could see, in this case, what we're going to call gauges. These are half gauges. You also have an option of a full gauge or a full circle, where you show a value based on how much of the circle is filled in or not. So like I said, the list is going to be really, really long. Lots of cool stuff coming. So I really can't wait till we get this out there. So I decided to take a look specifically at record tiling because I thought this was kind of a cool feature that in its name probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense or just isn't clear. So I thought I would illustrate it. So this is what I mean by record tiling, where you take a set of records and rather than have them set up as a like a multi-record block or an Excel spreadsheet, if you will, you break them up into blocks, into cards or tiles. In this case, I don't know, it's kind of boring. I just took your standard record and I broke it up into six tiles. You could have as many as will fit on your screen. As you navigate, in this particular case, the record orientation is vertically. And what that means is if I hit the down arrow, if this was actually a running form, the next record would be the middle one on the left. And then if I do down again, it'll be the left one on the bottom. And then if I hit down again, I'll go up to the top right and then down, down, down until I get to the next record. And then everything would keep pushing up one more, one more, one more. Of course, you could do horizontal record orientation, but that's pretty rare anyway. Okay. I'm actually noticing this is an older set of slides and not the ones I wanted to present. So some of the stuff I wanted isn't here. I might actually stop at some point and we'll switch slides out. This set of slides I actually shared something similar to this again when I was in Germany a few years ago, but I wanted to bring it back to life here because it's looking more like we're going to deliver on this. This is not a new login screen for forms. This is actually a form. It's a canvas and a window that I created. I put the background image on there and the text fields and the buttons, and you'll be able to create something that looks exactly like this. But notice the changes in the widgets. Notice that the text fields, for example, don't have a border all the way around it. They just have the border on the bottom. That the password field has the show password button on the right. The green button for sign in, of course you could do this today, is much broader and bolder and more modern looking just simply by changing its size and the color. But if you move over to the middle image, you can see that the border is highlighted. We're going to give you control over the color of the border. On the right-hand side, you can see that there's a mouse rolled over the button, and the button color changes as you roll over it, kind of similar to what you see in a web page. So very modern functionality that previously you did not otherwise see. Some other things or other pointers here that I didn't actually say out loud. You could see in the window title, we've removed the icon or given you the ability to remove the icon. And again, this is a form, not a login screen. So this is something you'd be able to create. And of course, you could create this today yourself, just minus some of the new functionality that's available. Okay. I actually shared this on social media a couple of years ago, right after I did that other conference. And it seemed to be pretty well received. I recently did similar looking at one of our cloud login screens. So on Oracle Cloud, I was logging in one day and I saw the dialogue, the login dialogue, and I said, you know what, that'd be really easy to do in Forms. So I went ahead and I copied it and I made my Forms application have the same kind of dialogue. So we have a lot of people that often say, you know, my Forms application looks stale and old, but how stale and old they look is on you, right? I mean, you could change to whatever you want. It's all in the creativity that you're prepared to inject into the application. This is a very, very, very trivial screen, if you want to call it a screen, to create. So if you have a custom login screen today, turning it into something that looks a little fresher, a little modern, a little brighter, larger text fields, much more visually appealing. It's simple to do. I mean, you could create this in a matter of minutes. So that becomes step one. Obviously, the application, the depths of the application become a little bit more work, but this gives you a little bit of an insight into the palette that you might potentially use. The other thing that you may or may not notice here is the canvas underneath has kind of a gradient coloring to it. The bottom's kind of darker than the top. That functionality was introduced in version 12, so that's already there. You could do that today. And this rainbow looking line across the top is just a static image. And it's just an image imported onto the canvas on top of a frame. So nothing too grossly creative here. Okay. Some other miscellaneous enhancements in Fusion Middleware. Obviously, I mentioned the whole stack will come out as 14.1.2. The embedded database that is in the Oracle Home that makes up forms and reports likely will be moved to version 23, which today isn't even available yet. It's available as a developer's release, but it's not available for production use right now. We're looking at supporting Java 17 and 21 on the server. Very likely we'll ship with 17, and if you wanted to use 21, that would be something you could choose to do on your own later. Java 8 will no longer be supported on the server. As a side effect of picking up Java 17 and 21, there's a new feature in those versions of Java called virtual threading. A little bit different than what's there before. I'm not going to go into the technical details of Java, but I just wanted to point out that these versions of Java now support a new virtual threading concept, which is estimated to improve performance by somewhere on the order of 10 to 30%, depending upon the application and how it was written, and so on. For forms, that will only directly impact the servlet, which is good in cases where you have a lot of end users, because the servlet is your traffic cop managing all that traffic. And if that traffic cop can perform better, obviously getting the data to and from the user faster is going to help improve performance. It's also going to help for things like starting and stopping servers. If you have your own custom deployments, if you've written your own deployments, your own app, your own J2E apps to specifically target this virtual threading, obviously those are going to perform better than if coded in the traditional way. Okay. All of this information about what I just talked about, that virtual threading part of it, is available in a variety of places. That blog that I have listed there is just one of them, but there are many others. More specific targeted information about the entire stack and 14 in middleware can be found in the Fusion Middleware statement of direction using that URL that I have listed as well. So the what you need to know part. So as you come out of whatever version it is you're on today, you're going to have to make a decision on what it is you want to do and how you want to do it. Do you want to upgrade? Do you want to do a new install? For a lot of customers, you like doing the upgrade approach because it means not having to reconfigure a lot of the configuration you've had in place for several years. For others, they like doing the new installs. My personal preference is new install. But if you want to do an upgrade, the expectation right now is you'll need to be at least on 12.2.1.4 or 12.2.1.19. If you want to upgrade to 14, that's the plan at the moment. If you're on an older version, you'll have to get here first. I'm only talking about the case where you want to do an upgrade. And I don't mean if you're coming from 6i, that is not an upgrade to 12. That's a new install because it's a completely different technology. So these are just cases where you're coming, for example, from version 11 or 12, and you want to get to the eventual 14. The minimum database version for your application data and the repository schemas likely will be 19 or 23. That's still yet to be determined. For operating systems, historically, and I honestly don't know why this is, but historically, we tended to support many different versions of the various operating systems. I think we're going to see that scale back a little. We're likely going to start off with the more common or current versions. For example, and I'm going to make an example up because we're subject to change by the time we deliver, but let's say for Windows, the current version of Windows Server is 20 version that we certify with as we go out the door. Hopefully everyone could still hear me because I'm getting a message that says my connection is failing. And similar would be true for Linux. Regarding the client side on forms, as of right now, Internet Explorer, Microsoft has de-supported the use of embedded applets, Java applets. So realistically, using embedded Java applets is already not supported, although as I said earlier, many customers still elect to do that. Even with Microsoft Edge and IE mode, again, customers are still choosing to do that. For 14, we do not know what we intend on certifying just yet. There is a possibility that we will write off embedded applets and simply say it's just not supported anymore. However, we probably will continue to deliver the functionality to make it work, but we will probably do it in such a way that we won't support it. Meaning if you have a technical problem, the support team is going to ask you, does the same problem reproduce when you do it using Java Web Start or standalone launcher? If it does not reproduce, then they will likely not proceed any further. So if you're not already using standalone launcher and or Web Start, I encourage you to do so. And again, embedded applet is already de-supported both by Microsoft, and even our own Java team no longer supports the components within the JRE installation that do that either. They still deliver the technology, but don't necessarily support it. Okay. The final event for me for this year is going to be that NYOUG, or German user group, that I mentioned earlier. It will be the first and only live event that I do this year. Unfortunately, I wish I had the opportunity to do others this year, but I didn't. So I will actually be in Germany in November.
Hi, Michael. Not sure if you can hear me, but I think we've all
Collect.
lost audio from you.
You lost the audio?
Oh, yep, probably for the last
Okay.
20 seconds, but you're back right now.
Okay. So I won't completely go over what I just said, other than basically that I will be in Germany in November doing this event, and information about it. If you happen to be in that area, in the Nuremberg, Germany area around that time, you could do a little bit of a search and find me there. And by all means, certainly attend, come say hello, and we could talk. Wow, I did good. I went pretty quick. We covered just about everything. There are some questions here. I'll rifle through those quickly, and if you have more, certainly add to the list. Let's go through some of these questions. So the very first question was, what versions of WebLogic standalone server can host 12.2.1.19? The answer is none. So the WebLogic standalone is for exactly that, is for Java standalone only. For 12.2.1.19, you must use Fusion Middleware Infrastructure 12.2.1.4, and then install Forms and Reports 12.2.1.19 on top of it. But the standalone Java versions are not for that purpose. They do not host any of the Fusion Middleware stack components. That one. The second question says, we're using 12.2.1.4 on IBM AIX and Red Hat Linux. I understand that Forms 12.2.1.4 end of error correction supports September 2024. Plan is to migrate to 14 without moving to 19. We'd like to know what will be 12.2.1.4 end of error correction security fixes and how long will be available. Okay, so again, if you're using 12.2.1.4 on any platform, error correction support for 12.2.1.4 is expected to end in September of 2024. There is a possibility that 14 will be available prior to that September date, but I would not bet on that. We just don't know. There's just no way for us to know right at this moment when that will be available. So if you have a requirement to be up to date with security patches, for example, I would not wait. Moving to 12.2.1.19 from 12.2.1.4 is actually trivial. If you look at the 12.2.1.19 documentation and specifically look for in-place upgrade, you'll see that the level of effort to do it should be relatively easy. I will admittedly say we are chasing an issue right now that is causing a little bit of a problem. If you've patched 12214 WLS that is inside Fusion Middleware infrastructure and you tried to upgrade in that manner, there are some problems being reported. We are investigating that right now. I assume that we will have a fix for that here shortly, assuming that impacts all the platforms. So that's the story with that. So we'll go with that. The next one says, asking about report builder standalone. I don't know the answer to that. We have discussed it. It is more probable that what we will see is reports taking on one of those lighter weight configuration options that I mentioned earlier, where potentially you do the full installation with no database repository, and you have a reduced down domain, if you want to call it that, which would give you that lighter weight configuration. But I don't see them doing the standalone version because reports has a little tighter dependency on the runtime components for the builder. So I think there were some technical reasons why they were not able to do that. So that's for reports. There's a question here about migration process. I assume we're talking about upgrade. Conveniently, there is a document specifically for upgrading. If you go onto the forms product page and scroll down to documentation and go into the forms 122119 documentation library, conveniently enough, we have a document dedicated to moving from an old version. Now, this is for the application. For the software, because you're 20 years behind the curve, if you're on 6i, there is no upgrade of the software. You have to do a new installation. You'll leverage this document to upgrade your application and its code. In most cases, there are no code changes needed. There are some cases where there are, but generally speaking, there should not be a whole lot of code changes required. So that's upgrade. Since there's going to be a newer version of Forms, is Oracle going to add any classes for Forms in my learning platform? Good question. So there's a question here about are we going to have like Oracle University expose any new classes? I hate to say it, but probably not. The good news is that the basic functionality of Forms hasn't changed really forever. So for the most part, if you're familiar with version 11 release 1 or newer, version 12, version 14, they're all basically the same. They're administered the same way. You design your applications the same way. Really what's different are the new features. And in most cases, the new features, at least on the form side, are going to be development side features, in which case the builder help will have the information on that. And then we will also have a new features guide, just like we do for version 12, which will point out what those new features are. And then you could go into the builder help to find out how to use that new feature. So no, unfortunately, we probably will not have any new classes. We might, but it's kind of unlikely. Here's someone mentioning about my sound cutting off. Hopefully that's got itself going. We're using WebLogic Forms 12214. Do you recommend migrating directly version to version of 14.12 or first to 12.21.19? So this is what we talked about earlier. You can take the risk and stay on 12.2.14 if your organization is not typically pressured to do security updates and or you are not making substantial changes to your environment or application where you might be at risk of hitting a bug or something and need patches, you could potentially wait on 12.2.14 until 14. I don't really recommend that. One thing I did not mention is that one thing to remember is 12.2.14 is built on top of a 12.1 database client. So if you have technical issues with that database client layer, because that version of the database is no longer supported, it's going to be difficult to get you any error correction on it. So moving to 12.2.1.19 will help get you past that because 12.2.1.19 is built on top of a 12.2.1.19 database. Someone is asking, is there overlap between 12.2.1.19 and the upcoming 14? I assume overlap in the context of support. So as mentioned, support for 12.2.1, well now 12.2.1.19, Premier support will take you out until the end of 2026. So with a plan of delivering 14 in 2024, we should see anywhere between a 1 to 2 year overlap between the two versions. We generally try to have about a 12 to 18 month overlap between the versions and their support, so that you've got a year and a half or so to do the upgrade as needed. Sound cutting out, sound cutting out. I wish it would ding at me and tell me that the sound was cutting out, because I didn't even hear those come in. I did mention reports, but I'll mention it again because somebody asked. Yes, we are planning on delivering 14 of reports. It is not expected to have any substantial new features, although it will have all the latest new bug fixes to date that you see in 12, as well as some others. It will have some minor new features. For example, the inclusion of the database update that I talked about, database embedded database 23 client, and a handful of others, but nothing substantial. Good question, Frank, about running Java 8 on the client. The plan at the moment is on the client tier for forms. We will support Java 8, Java 17, and Java 21. So the long-term release versions of each of the Java versions. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is even though we plan on supporting Java 8 on the client, that's not going to do you any good if you're developing, let's say, Java Beans for forms, for those of you familiar with Java Beans. If you're developing Java Beans with Java 17, for example, in your forms, then the client has to be running Java 17 or newer also, and won't work against Java 8. So that's something to keep in mind. But yes, we do plan on continuing Java 8 on the client. Can standalone forms builder 4 and 19 be on the same workstation? That's a tricky question. In fact, it's funny, I was asked this question just the other day. Realistically, you could have as many versions on the same machine as you want if you're familiar with the operating system on which you're using it. And I say that because if you understand how the software works at the operating system level, having multiple versions is easy, right? You have to make sure that there's no overlap in the system path. You have to make sure there's no overlap in listener ports. As long as you're conscious of how all those pieces parts work, you can make it work. As an example, I have a machine that has version 6, 904, 10, and 11 on it, and I could easily put 12 on it. So you could do it. You just can't run them all at the same time if they happen to be sharing any of the same ports. You also have to make sure that there's no system variables set that cause one to look in the wrong directory. So if you started with batch files or shell scripts or something where you set all that stuff and don't set it at the system level, you could potentially do that. Is there a beta plan for 14? It's funny you should say that. So we actually are having discussions about beta. However, the timing right now looks like we will not make it. By the way, we are at the top of the hour, at least in the US, so we're running out of time, but I'm going to keep going until Monica cuts me off. We are looking at a potential beta. Forms may or may not be included. I don't know yet, but we are investigating it. Let me go through here real quick. Form, add new features to adjust the form's device resolution. So someone's asking about like responsive UI, like on a mobile device or a web page or something. We're not adding anything like that. In 12.2.1.19, we did enhance the client DPI functionality, which is kind of a magnification functionality. We did change it so that it operates on a percentage of the display size, which is kind of a dynamic changing of the screen size. However, it doesn't actually change the size of the objects. It just kind of magnifies them or reduces them based on the resolution of the screen. So check out the 12.2.1.4.19, or excuse me, the 12.2.1.19 release notes for details on that. Question about supporting database 23 data types. Don't know the full answer to that yet, but we're hoping that we will be able to do that. We're still looking at some options there, like JSON objects, for example. We're looking at all of that. Red Hat 9 or Oracle Linux 9 for 12.2.1.19 is a possibility, but don't know just yet. Probably not an option for 12.2.1.4. Support for 14 in containers. You already technically can do that, although we don't officially certify it. I think that's kind of it. Custom login screen as opposed to the default login. How do I direct form? Oh, so someone's asking about how do I have forms use a custom login screen instead of the default one? There's an on logon trigger that's used to do that. There's actually a support note. I don't have the number quickly off the top of my head, but there is a support note that explains how to do that. It actually was written, oh my gosh, probably 20 years ago, but the concepts in it still apply today. In fact, that form that I showed you leverages the functionality that is in that old note, although I've made some minor changes to it to accommodate what I wanted in that form. So yeah, take a look at the online help for the builder for the on logon trigger for that. Integration with Microsoft AD. Integration with Microsoft Active Directory has to be done through external authentication or Oracle Access Manager or Identity Cloud Service. That's the only way to do it. We are a database client and not anything else, so we're not going to support Microsoft Active Directory directly. What about Oracle Forms after 2027? Well, Oracle Forms is likely to go well past 2027 because 14 isn't planned to be released until 2024, where it likely will get 5 years of Premier support and 3 years of extended support, which will take us well into 2030s. And certainly we'll be discussing version 15, 16, or 17 by that time as well. So lots of stuff planned for the future. Like I said, I could talk about this forever. Feel free to reach out to me on social media if you have other questions. You could also reach out to me directly. I don't mind. The Forms Forum is a good place for resources for technical information. We've got a great community around it. Many of you on this call right now, and I greatly appreciate your input on those forums and even the social media as well. Without a community, we're nothing. So again, I greatly appreciate your input on that. My Twitter handle or account, whatever you want to call it, is here on the slide. The Forms Forum, I think I had it up on the screen a minute ago, but if not, I'm going to pull it back up real quick, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Monica and Coleman. So the Forms Forum is here, and you can see my pretty little face all over the place on here. Information about quarterly patches. If you have new feature suggestions, here's a place where you could post those. If you're going to post a thread on the forum, I recommend you read this thread first. And all of these pinned threads, you probably should take a look at them. There's a lot of good information in there. Okay. And
Awesome,
Coleman, on
Michael.
that, oh, there you go,
Sorry.
Monica.
I
I'm
was
going
going to ask
to turn it
you
to you.
if you could send us some of these links, and
Sure.
we could include that in our follow-up email to everybody so they can find you quickly and find all of these resources quickly.
I certainly can do that.
Love
And
it.
of course, they'll be up on NYOUG's website as well. And thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And just a reminder to everybody, this was recorded and you'll have access to rewatch it through either nyoug.org or orapub.com. Look for a follow-up email from us. We'll let you know when everything's uploaded and accessible to you guys. Thank you so much, Michael. We hope to have you again soon. And thanks, Coleman, for co-hosting today.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.